Hi there, it's Rebecca. And what I want to talk about today is the fact that God has a plan for every one of us. And I've discovered that there are signs that allow us to look back on our lives to see how there was always a plan in place once you get that perspective. You might have to get older in order to see it like I am, because I can look back now and see how things fell into place in a very interesting way. For instance, I became a stewardess for United Airlines in 1967. My name is Rebecca Tripp. And every time I get on an airplane, practically, passengers back then would say, "Are you Juan Tripp's daughter?" Now, Juan Tripp, who spells it Trippe, was the founder of Pan American World Airways, which was the flagship carrier for the United States. And it was a very, very exciting airline because they went to all these exotic destinations all over the world. They weren't a domestic airline like United. United happened to be the largest domestic carrier in the free world back then. But we just flew around the continent of the United States and Hawaii. So we didn't go to those exotic places, and we were all kind of jealous of those Pan Am stewardesses because they had really cute uniforms and they got to lay over in exotic cities on every single trip they went on. So I used to be kind of jealous, and I'd say, well, why would I be with United Airlines if I was Juan Tripp's daughter? Well, years ago, and years after I had retired from United Airlines, who do I meet? Juan Tripp's son. I was at a party in my hometown, Westport, Massachusetts, and I met him and his wife. They were living in, get this, my high school boyfriend's house, where I had hung out in my junior and senior year of high school, imagining how it would probably be really cool to work for an airline and be a stewardess, because I was all about glamour, adventure, travel, excitement. And even though I went to college after high school, it was still on my radar screen to work for the airlines. So when I met Juan Tripp's son, he was commiserating about how awful it was when Pan Am went bankrupt for them, because all of a sudden their great lifestyle, just jumping on a Pan Am jet to go to some exotic place, was gone. And that was a very traumatic thing for the Pan Am people when the company went under after that terrible accident they had in Lockerbie that kind of finished them off. But we got into a conversation and I asked him why there was an E on the end of his name, Tripp. And I found out we really were related. We all go back to this man named John Tripp, who was English and came over to the United States in around 1630 and settled in Portsmouth, Rhode Island after landing in Boston. After the Mayflower came, they headed over here. I guess there was a big migration at that time from England into the New World, America, and come to find out we were actually related. All the Tripps are related to each other. And he just discovered Westport, Massachusetts one day when he sailed into it and decided to relocate there and bought this house that I used to hang out in when I was a teenager. Now, of all the houses on the planet, don't you think it's a little strange and synchronistic that Pan Am's son would buy that particular house? And it made me realize, because he wasn't, he was a scheduler, he told me, he wasn't a crew member. And I thought to myself, well, that sounds kind of boring compared to what I got to do. I was glad I was on the airplanes, flying around, meeting people, going to destinations and exploring for all the years that I did. And the interesting thing is, when Pan Am went bankrupt, we assimilated a lot of the Pan Am people into our workforce, and I got to fly with a lot of the Pan Am former stewardesses who told me the stories of the places they went, and we were flying on a lot of their airplanes because we took those with the deal that United did in order to acquire a lot of the Pan Am routes, airplanes, people. And when I look back on it, it's like my higher self, the God within me, was protecting me from going through a horrible bankruptcy situation and having to adjust myself to find another airline to work for. So it gave me a much smoother career path by going with United. Another thing that happened that was very synchronistic was when 9/11 happened. I was flying out of Boston. I was the number one purser in Boston. And I had actually gone to the computer and, we bid for our flights the month before. I had bid to fly flight 175, which was, of course, the second airplane to hit the towers. But at the last minute, I changed my bid after a conversation I had with one of my colleagues, flying partners. And I was motivated to go to the computer and actually change my bid to a different flight to Los Angeles than 175. And I was spared. But it makes me realize when I look back on certain incidents that I've had in my life and events that I've either been part of or barely missed, that God does have a plan for us. And if we are aligning ourselves with the God within and expecting good things to happen, because God is only good, then we will see when we look back on everything that there was a plan. We're here for a reason. But when we see the synchronicities, we can call them coincidences, but they're really not coincidences. When you wake up to the realization that we're living in a universe of spirit, mind, consciousness, harmony, there is always a reason things happen the way they do. And all you have to do is follow the synchronicities to see the signs, and you will live in a much more harmonious, peaceful place. Because once you get it, that God is in control of your life, it gives you that inner peace that passeth understanding. And you don't worry about what's going to happen like you used to, because you know in your core that if you go to that place, the God within, everything will work out.